The wait is over. Dive into Audible's most anticipated collection, The Best of 2025, featuring top audiobooks, podcasts, and originals across all genres. Our editors have carefully curated this year's must-listens, from brilliant hidden gems to the buzziest new releases. Every title in this collection has earned its spot. This is your go-to for the absolute best in 2025 audio entertainment. Whether you love thrillers, romance, or nonfiction, your next favorite listen awaits. Discover why there's more to imagine when you listen at audible.com/bestoftheyear.
Francheska and Misheila Martinez were twin sisters living in Paterson, New Jersey in the spring of 2000. But that summer, both of them disappeared separately, and the police assumed they were runaways. But after 25 years of no contact, we have to wonder, did something else happen? I'm Charlie, and welcome to Crimelines. Hello and welcome to Day 5 of the 12 Days of Crimelines, where I am covering 12 missing persons cases over the course of December. And quick confession, as we are 5 of these in, the last couple are going to come out in early January. It just is what it is. It is the holiday season, a lot's going on, which I'm sure everyone can identify with, and I would rather take a little bit more time with these than try to rush them out. And if you saw the back end of the schedule I made for myself at the beginning of the month and how far into it I am, you would be embarrassed for me. So the 2 weeks I usually take off in the beginning of January will actually just be overflow for these episodes. I'm sure maybe only 10 of you actually pay attention to my schedule or care. I know I'm not the only podcast on your list, so I do appreciate everyone listening to these extra episodes because you do have so many other options out there, and some of these cases are ones that don't get a lot of coverage and need more eyes on them. And that is certainly the case with today's episode. This is the case of 2 missing teenagers who did not go missing at the same time, but rather from the same family. Francheska and Misheila Martinez were fraternal twins. They were born on June 10th, 1987 to Jose Martinez and Wanda Gassat. In the year 2000, the girls were living with their mother, Wanda, and their other siblings in Paterson, New Jersey, while Jose had since moved back to his home in Puerto Rico. And Wanda did have a boyfriend, Hipólito Miguel Corneal, and he lived either with them or at the very least he stayed over frequently. The reporting's not very clear on this. Francheska and Misheila both did well in school. They were in the 7th grade, and they had a pretty strong group of friends. Not much else is known about them as people, but we do know about their disappearances. Well, we know mostly about Francheska's. She went missing first, and the circumstances of her disappearance have been reported on multiple times over the years. However, I do have to point out they are inconsistently reported. Unfortunately, the circumstances of Misheila's disappearance are hardly reported on at all, so we are having to take some pieces and try to put them together the best we can here, and we are going to start with Francheska's disappearance. Most recent sources will tell you that Francheska went missing on Friday, June 9th, 2000, the day before her 13th birthday. This is how it is listed in places like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the Charlie Project. However, all of the reporting from back when this happened said she went missing the day after her 13th birthday on June 11th. At first, I thought the inconsistency may be a difference between when she went missing and when she was reported missing. However, the reports at the time are pretty clear that she was reported missing on the day she went missing, which, again, they said was June 11th. There are reasons to think June 11th is the more accurate date other than just that that's what was initially reported. We know that Paterson schools are still in session in mid to late June, and Francheska and Misheila would have been in school if this happened on a Friday, and we know they weren't on the day Francheska went missing, because they were home around 10 or 10:30 in the morning when Francheska told the family she was going to go walk down to the store. Misheila said she saw through the kitchen window her sister walking away from the house in the direction of the shop. Several minutes later, their stepfather Miguel headed down the street to the same place. Francheska wasn't there when he got there, and he hadn't seen her along the walk, so he asked the clerk if Francheska had been in. The clerk said they didn't see her all morning. Miguel then headed back home, and Francheska wasn't there either. So it would almost seem like Francheska went missing on her walk. However, we do have a point of contact later in the day. Misheila said that Francheska called home around 1:30 in the afternoon. On this call, Francheska said she was at Great Falls Park with some friends, which was about 2 miles from their house. Francheska asked Misheila not to tell anyone where she was, likely since she didn't have permission to be there. There has been some speculation online that maybe this call never happened and Misheila made it up, which we will get into later, because if you think about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense for Francheska to call home to tell someone she doesn't want people to know where she was. If she wanted this to be kept a secret, why call at all? I do think it's possible, if I think back to my own teenage logic, that maybe Francheska would have called to gauge how much trouble she was in for pulling a disappearing act when she was supposed to just be walking to the store. And then when she realized from her sister she wasn't in trouble at all, or at least not yet, she decided to go ahead and stay out with her friends and told Misheila not to say anything. If this call happened, it would be the last time anyone heard from Francheska. When she didn't come home that night, her mother called the police. Francheska was assumed to be a runaway, largely due to that phone call to Misheila admitting she was off hanging out with friends. But while running away was the assumption, we do see an active and thorough investigation from the start, which included getting Francheska's photo into the newspapers and talking to all of her friends. The investigators did hear a few things from Francheska's friends that were troubling. One was that no one was at the falls that day and no one had seen her. So she was either with people her family didn't know about, or she was using these friends as a cover for where she really was. Francheska had told a friend the day before she went missing that she really wanted to go to New York City for the Puerto Rican Day parade, but her parents had said no. And that's another reason to believe that she did go missing on June 11th. That is the day of the parade. So the police were considering the possibility that Francheska had left Paterson altogether and was headed to New York. If she got on the train, it's only about an hour trip. Assuming Francheska got that far, there was quite a bit of concern if she was at the parade. There is an entire Wikipedia article about the 2000 Puerto Rican Day Parade because of the number of attacks on women that day. It was about a 12-hour span from 6 in the morning until 6 in the evening where there were multiple attacks by a loosely connected group of men. Over 50 women reported either harassment, physical attacks, sexual assaults, and/or violent robberies. And that is just the number of documented reports. The police were criticized for not being responsive to those who were trying to get help from them. And that criticism even extended to some of the 911 dispatchers. It was really a scary place to think of a newly 13-year-old being there alone. Francheska was not among the people who reported an assault, but this was a huge event and there's no telling if she made it there that day. As far as I can tell, they did not find any evidence of her traveling to the city, like her showing up on Port Authority cameras. But that doesn't mean she couldn't have gotten a ride. A neighbor claimed he saw Francheska in the passenger seat of a black Honda with a man behind the wheel. The neighbor waved at her, and he said she ducked down in her seat like she didn't want to be seen. If she was with someone she wasn't supposed to be with, you could see why she would do this. The investigators had learned from her friends that there may have been an unknown man in her life. According to these friends, Francheska told them she was dating or seeing a 22-year-old and managed to keep the whole thing hidden from her parents. But from what I've read, she also seems to have kept him hidden from her friends. Other than claiming she had this older boyfriend, No one had met him, and no one even knew his name. And the only other lead that has been made public is that Francheska had an argument with a young man about 2 weeks before she disappeared, and he made a comment that could be seen as a little threatening. It was something like, "Don't worry, you'll see what's going to happen to you," which would be something that would make you uncomfortable, but given she disappeared 2 weeks later, it seemed even more ominous. But this tip and her being in a car and her maybe having a boyfriend and her making this phone call, that is pretty representative of how this investigation went on the whole. These isolated tips would come in, they wouldn't lead anywhere, and none of them seemed to fit into the overall puzzle. But the most bizarre lead happened on Wednesday, June 28th, which was 2.5 weeks after Francheska disappeared. A white plastic grocery bag showed up in the family's driveway. Inside was a pair of blue denim shorts, a floral tube top, and cotton underwear, which were all the things Francheska was wearing on the day she walked to the store. The only thing not in that bag were her shoes. The clothes were in good condition. They didn't have tears. They didn't look like she had been wearing them for 2.5 weeks straight. And her mother, Wanda, mentioned to a reporter that she thought it was strange that the clothes showed up without a note. If someone was trying to send a message to the family by leaving the clothes for them, why not spell it out? One theory about this bag that would make it seem less like a statement is that maybe Francheska had changed into something else when she left the house and had stashed these only for the family to come across them 2.5 weeks later. But I don't know how plausible this is. For starters, she was wearing shorts and a tube top. Most of the time that teens change their clothing, it's to change it to something their parents wouldn't otherwise let them wear, things like shorts and a tube top. The other thing is that the bag was found in the driveway, and I think it would be odd that they missed it for weeks. The driveways in this neighborhood are narrow. They're about 1 car wide, and they run in between the houses. These are not large properties with bushes and trees lining the driveways. There's no foliage to cover up the bag or anything like that. It seems impossible no one would have spotted it. Something that is only mentioned in one article I could find that feels odd is that inside the bag, according again to one article, was a photo of a different missing person. Not Francheska, but someone else. The article did not say who it was, and no official statements from the police have confirmed this as far as I can tell. And the police were speaking to the media. After the clothes were found, the police said they still didn't suspect foul play, so I'm not sure about this picture of a missing person. I would think the police would have addressed it if it was true, and I am surprised it was only in one article, which is why I'm not sure this is factual. But I wanted to put it out there just in case it is, and just in case it's relevant. A month after the clothes showed up in the driveway, which was 6 weeks after Francheska was last seen, that is when her twin sister, Misheila, disappeared. Misheila's case got virtually no press coverage at the time that I can find, available in the archives at newspapers.com, of course. But what has come out since then is that Misheila actually left a note telling her mother that she was running away, which may be why there's not as much coverage. In that note, she said that she and Francheska had been unhappy at home and that Wanda did not love their stepfather Miguel enough. She went on to accuse Wanda of cheating on Miguel, which is an accusation Miguel has made. He thought she was cheating on him with a neighbor, but Wanda has denied it. It's not been spelled out anywhere whether this letter was handwritten or typed, so we can't say for sure if we know Misheila wrote the letter or not, but it seems to have been accepted as it was written by her, and we have to question, why did Misheila care so much about how Miguel was being treated in the relationship? The theory at the time Misheila disappeared was that, quote, she is suspected of being in the company of a female relative, end quote. And that female relative was Francheska. The authorities believe that Francheska had run away and convinced Misheila to join her. But two 13-year-olds out on their own would not get very far, so there is real concern that the girls were trafficked. Perhaps Francheska did have this older boyfriend who groomed and lured her away and was then used to get her sister to join. The question that we have left is what happened from there? That was 25 years ago. Where are the girls now, and why have they never been able to come forward to put this case to rest and give their family members some answers? Some of the twins' family, including their brother, believe that the answer to what happened is closer to home and that the girls are not coming back because they have been murdered. He believes that their mother's boyfriend Miguel was behind whatever happened. And this theory really got started just months after the twins disappeared in September of 2000 when Miguel killed someone. He was not living with Wanda at the time. He was instead living nearby in the basement of what has been referred to sometimes as a multi-family house and other times as a boarding house. Miguel went out to the bar one night and he met 18-year-old Nellie Mercado. Nellie had a rough life. Her mother died of AIDS when she was very young, and she was bounced between foster homes and kinship placements and back again, where she was repeatedly abused in every way you can imagine. Think of it, and it probably happened to Nellie. By the time Nellie was 18, she was deep into addiction, and she did sex work to fund her addiction. And as we often see, she also engaged in survival sex sometimes because she had no steady place to live. Spending the night with a man meant one less night on the streets. It seems like in the wee morning hours of Friday, September 8th, Nellie went home with Miguel. Around 4 a.m., a neighbor of Miguel's heard screaming. And then around 6 a.m., a resident in the home that Miguel lived in walked out onto the porch, and that's when he found Nellie's nude body. The authorities were called, but Miguel had left town. He went to Lawrence, Massachusetts. While he was there, he told his family that he was going to prison soon, and he said his goodbyes. And when he returned to Paterson 2 days later, he was arrested without incident. Miguel pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, but eventually struck a plea deal for aggravated manslaughter in April of 2001. Miguel's story was that Nellie had followed him home from the bar, and she was trying to force her way into his apartment while he was trying to keep her out. She was begging him to let her perform a sex act on him in exchange for money or drugs, but he resisted. And she tried to rob him. According to him, she grabbed his gold chain and crucifix. Miguel admitted to putting his hands around her neck during this encounter, but his defense attorney said she started foaming at the mouth due to either a seizure or a drug overdose. The state argued that Nellie did not die of a seizure. She was strangled to death, and whatever force Miguel used was way more than he needed to prevent a robbery, given that Nellie was 5 feet tall and not even 100 pounds. Miguel said he panicked when Nellie lost consciousness. He did not admit that he knew she was dead, but he went and put her on the porch, hoping that someone would come and help her. But then he went back to bed before leaving town. At sentencing, Miguel asked for leniency. He was, according to his defense attorney, a hard worker who had overcome poverty in the Dominican Republic to build a better life in the United States. The defense argued he had no criminal record in the U.S., but the state said that's not terribly impressive because he had not been in the country that long. Miguel expressed love for his family and remorse for what he did, but the judge was not swayed. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and he had to serve 17 of them before he could be released. And then 17 years, nearly to the day after he was arrested, he was released in September of 2017. It is unclear where he is now. Nellie's family believed that Miguel was allowed to plead down all the way to manslaughter because of who Nellie was. She was a drug-addicted teen mom sex worker, and the lower charge reflected how the system viewed her importance. In other words, they did not agree with the plea deal, and it was incredibly hurtful to them that he did not get a life sentence. How this ties back to Francheska and Misheila Martinez is that Miguel killed a young woman, a teenager, just months after his stepdaughters went missing, and that showed what he was capable of. The twins' brother does suspect that Miguel is responsible due to sexual abuse that was happening in the home. He said that Miguel showed Francheska a lot of special attention, taking her on shopping trips to buy clothes and giving her gifts, things he did not do with his other stepchildren. Additionally, the brother has said one of the twins was showing symptoms that he now knows could indicate pregnancy. His view is that Miguel was grooming and abusing one or both of the sisters, and that somehow led to their disappearances. And that includes manipulating Misheila, first into lying about hearing from Francheska the afternoon she went missing. This phone call meant that Francheska officially, quote, went missing after Miguel had an alibi and not in the morning when he was out and about. Because why did he go walk down to the store so soon after Francheska? Another theory is that Miguel was involved in some way to get back at Wanda for cheating on him or his suspicion that she was cheating on him. Because according to Misheila's note, Wanda was not being a good partner to Miguel, and that was the root of the unhappiness in the home. And while arguing between parents or between parental figures can be a reason for a teenager to be unhappy, it does strike me as odd that that was the top of the list of complaints. And it wasn't just that Misheila's note said she was leaving because there was arguing or tension in the home. It was specifically that Wanda was treating Miguel poorly, and that just doesn't sound like what a 13-year-old would care most about. So was Misheila manipulated into reporting a phone call that didn't happen and into writing this note? We can't ask her because she disappeared right after. In 2017, the authorities told journalist Miguel Cruz Tejada that Miguel did make incriminating statements in regards to the girls' disappearances, but then he retracted what he said. Whatever he said was not enough of a confession to find the girls or to bring charges against him, and the investigators said dealing with Miguel has been frustrating. With the evidence that has been made public, which isn't much, I think the stepfather is a strong possibility. But it also seems possible that Francheska was groomed and lured away by someone, and then Misheila went to join her. If that is the case, while I would hate to think what the last 25 years of their lives have been like, at least it would mean they're alive out there. Hopefully someone listening to this knows where the girls are, or maybe they themselves will hear this and realize their family is still looking for them. And they have not been forgotten. Their brother especially has tried to keep their names out there and would welcome them home with open arms, no questions asked. If alive today, Francheska and Misheila Martinez would be 38 years old. They are not identical twins. Francheska has brown hair and brown eyes, while Misheila has brown hair, green eyes, and freckles. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has done age progressions for both girls to their early 30s, and I will post those on my social media. If you know anything in this case, you can call NCMEC at 1-800-THE-LOST.